Hello and welcome along to this special attheraces.com guide to the jumps. We're having a look forward to the National Hunt season in association with Betfair Exchange, and we'll be covering lots of territory with you from here in the studio over the next, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hours. We'll see how we go, basically. We've got a great panel assembled for you. I'm joined by Gold Cup Grand National winning jockey Mick Fitzgerald is in the house. Welcome, Mick.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah.
This time of year, this is your time of year, isn't it?
It is.
There's a nip in the air. We've had our first frost.
It is, and you know the difference between this year and last year is about 100 millimetres of rain.
Yeah.
And that has made trainers, jockeys' jobs so much easier because you're not guessing, oh, I wonder will it run, because what's the ground going to be like? Let's have a look, let's declare, let's get there and see how we get on. Trainers were just so stop-start last year, like so frustrating. And now, when I always think, on my travels, I go up Farringdon Road. You've got Barry Hill's gallop on my left, Nicky Henderson's grass gallops on my right. Last year, even up till Christmas, you didn't see any discs out. They're out already. And Nicky's been able to get those horses on the grass. That will mean his horses will be so much more forward than they have ever been at this time of the year, and especially in the last few seasons as well.
Yeah. Fantastic time of year, and we are in a different position, as Mick rightly points out. Also with us this evening is Kevin Blake, pundit, racing manager, planner, award-nominated writer, not in one category, but in two categories for his work for the attheraces.com website, nominated in two categories for the Horse Race Riders and Photographers Association Awards, which is great work. Well done, Kevin, on that.
Cheers, Boyce.
Welcome along.
Yeah, great to be here. And like Mick says, look, this is just the time of year, isn't it? You know, we hit in November, we're back to normality weather-wise, there's plenty of juice in the ground everywhere, and from now on, these good horses are going to start coming back. You know, last year's bumper horses taking their first step out over hurdles, last year's good hurdlers going over fences for the first time, which is something I particularly absolutely love. And of course the championship horses coming back. You know, it just comes at you rapid fire from here onwards. We've Down Royal to look forward to coming up, and they just come at you so quick, and it's magic. You know, I love my flat racing. But the way this game is set up, by the time the end of October comes, I've had enough of the flat, and I'm ready for the jumps again. And it's great the way it keeps us all very sweet and excited pretty much the whole way through the calendar year.
It does indeed. Hashtag the jumps are back. You've doubtless seen that trending. You can get in touch during the course of this evening, either via Twitter or via the Facebook, at the Races Facebook page as well. And that's a good way of getting involved in our competition as well. There's a great prize up for grabs. You could win a couple of tickets for any Ascot Jumps meeting of your choice this National Hunt season. Now, Novice Hurdlers is the division we're going to start with. And I've thrown in a bit of a wild card there. Not necessarily a championship type horse, but I'll tell you about him in a moment. Let's start with your selection, though, Kevin. It'd be a more familiar name to many of us, and that is Gypsy Island. Yeah,
you know, it's a tricky question to answer when you get asked for one to follow in any one division.
Well, particularly in this division, because you just made the point about we'll see hurdlers going chasing, but at least you know how good they were as hurdlers. And this is different, isn't it? You're trying to find a horse either from the bumper sort of division or maybe that you've just heard about at this stage.
Yeah, it's tricky. And look, just an example that springs to mind, you know, Relegate won the champion bumper at the Cheltenham Festival, came out hurdling, and a horrendous jumper of a hurdle, and didn't quite work out for her. Hopefully it will now that she's with Colin Murphy, but it's just an example. You're taking a lot on trust. Yep. But with Gypsy Island, you know, this is... I really liked her last season, right? But I went back watching videos for the last few days and just reminded myself of this mare, and my God, she's an absolute weapon. You know, I would dare venture that she was the best horse that we saw in bumpers last season. But because in the early part of last season she had a run over hurdles, she should have won. She finished second, but that disqualified her from running in the Grade 1 bumpers later in the season. But during the course of going through her bumpers, you know, she's left Colreevy for dead one day. You know, she's come out and absolutely smashed Daylight Katie, who is another mare that I think is very smart for Gordon Elliott. And just the style she does it in. She travels almost too well in her races. She has a turn of foot. And, you know, for me, if we'd had a normal National Hunt season last time round and she was running on soft ground the whole way through and you were looking at her, you'd say, God, you'd be a little bit worried about her on quickish ground because she has quite a rough action. You would be concerned, but she's operated on yielding ground there all through the season, so that's one less concern to have. The day she ran over hurdles, I'd actually be quite happy with her jumping, so at least we've seen her jumping once. And God, she'll be an awful lot of fun. As soon the higher up in class she goes, the better she'll be. She's one of those that she'll just want loads of pace in front of her. Help her relax, use that turn of foot. And to be honest, Boyce, if it wasn't for this absolute abomination of a mare's novice hurdle at the Cheltenham Festival...
You don't mince your words, Kevin. Come off the fence. Tell us what you really think.
If it wasn't for that abomination of a race, I'd be putting her up for the Supreme Novices with no hesitation whatsoever.
Well, this is a theme that we might return to because, of course, there are lots of mares that may not go to targets that they would have targeted if they didn't have the mares options, and we will doubtless return to it. But you're not a fan of giving them that option?
Not at the Cheltenham Festival. You know, the mayor's programme is very important. It does a very important job through the calendar, and it's working. They've expanded the mayor's programme greatly in recent years, and there's never been as many National Hunt mares in training. Great thing for the game, great thing for the breed. But the Cheltenham Festival is about the elite. It should be about the very best, taking on the very best, not giving them options to duck and dive. And if this mare goes through the season unbeaten over hurdles, which I suspect she will, she's trained by Peter Fahey, owned by JP McManus, who, by the law of averages, JP has so many horses, he'll probably have something else for the Supreme. And, you know, logic will dictate that they'll probably get split up. And that's just a real pity. Because, like I say, I believe this mare would have been the best of the bumper horses last season. I know there was a different reason why she didn't get a chance to contest those Grade 1s. But this season, they're going to have options in terms of keeping her to mare's company. And that's a pity. Because, look, it's logical. But, you know, I'm a sports fan. I want to see the best take on the best. And I believe this mare has the potential to be the best, boys, girls, whatever.
Yep. So Kevin's tried to find one of the best novice hurdlers. I've done something a little bit different, actually, which is a horse who's not actually a novice hurdler yet. He's a bumper winner called Baddesley. I wanted to throw him in for two reasons. One, I saw him in the flesh at Fontwell. I was with Philip Hyde, who's the clerk down there, and I hadn't spotted it. I was looking for an interview, and Philip Hyde was just standing there with his mouth open, saying, he looks like he's on springs, that horse, walking around. And once I looked, and I could see the athleticism of this horse. Beautiful mover and really interesting
Chris
horse.
Gordon's
He's
Baddesley.
with Chris Gordon,
Yeah.
and Chris Gordon has got a few of these Baddesley. He's got Baddesley Knight and Lord Baddesley as well. Baddesley Knight came out and ran very, very well. No, Lord Baddesley was second in a bumper. Baddesley Knight is going chasing. But they are Mr. and Mrs. Cheshire. That's right, the Krispy Kreme boss in Britain and Ireland. And they're buying some really nice horses, really proper sorts of horses. This, I think, was quite a hot little bumper, even though it was a small field. Two Irish point winners in behind him in second and third. The third was a Philip Hobbs horse, Dickie Johnson, to come all the way down to ride. I just thought this might be all right, actually, this horse. So I'm just throwing him in. I'm not saying we're going to see him in a novice hurdle, but I think you could follow him now. He might win another bumper, and then you'd assume he'll go novice hurdling, a horse to follow. What have you got for us in this division, Mick?
Well, I think I'm a little bit more straight down the middle, NYLN.
Yep.
It's quite funny the way this thing has worked out. There's lots of you watching at home who will think, oh yeah, well they've all worked this out beforehand. But the truth of it is, I said, well, you know, look, I want NYLN, but I'm sure one of the other lads will have NYLN. So if I can't have NYLN, put down Gypsy Island.
There we
so
go.
of course, Kevin has got Gypsy Island, and I've now got my chance with NYLN.
Well, we've covered it then, which is good.
Absolutely, because, and the reason I've gone for NYLN is, you look at Gypsy Island and you can see her winning bumpers. She's small, she's tidy, she looks pacey, and she looks like she's tailor-made for flat races. You look at NYLN, you watch him walking around the paddock and you think, Cheltenham bumper, this fella's going to get found out. Look at him, he's a tank.
Right.
Like, this is a big horse. He's got a lot of size and scope about him. You know, he is a proper racehorse, and you know, it's that old adage of, oh, whatever he does next year, wait till next year, wait till next year. Yeah. This horse is doing it now. And I think for him to be able to do it now, knowing what's ahead of him, and when he gets obstacles in front of him, Jamie Codd, who is champion point-to-point rider, you could see him licking his lips at the thought of riding this fella over an obstacle. And this fella will take very high rank. To beat the speedsters that have been chucked at him in those bumpers and to brush them aside. They threw down challenge one by one by one, and he just beat them all.
And Mick, you know well that if this horse was owned by Gigginstown, for example, there's zero chance he would have run in the champion bumper. Even, you know, being in Gordon's yard, but leading up to Cheltenham, you got the firm impression of him that he wasn't so sure in the idea himself, but the owners were very keen to go, so he did what he was asked. He got in there and he went and won. And, you know, you watch his bumpers, there's always a moment, isn't there?
Yeah, you think, oh, here we go.
He looks in trouble. But like you say, the fact that he's been able to overcome that over a distance that's, you know, I think the fullness of time will show was just too short for him. To have that class to overcome that, God, I'd be super excited about him. You just get the impression that going 2.5 or maybe even a bit further, it'll just be a lot closer to his natural rhythm and his natural comfort zone. And one can only hope he's some bit slick over a hurdle.
Yeah,
But
we don't have to nominate Cheltenham races for these
No.
horses at this stage, do we? I mean, he'd be quoted in everything, I guess, wouldn't he?
But you're looking at the Ballymore.
Yeah.
Like we're saying, oh, we're not looking at particular targets, but you are.
Yeah.
You're thinking Ballymore.
Well, you say that, but
Straight away.
you know, we've seen that type of horse with
Yeah.
that type of profile thrive in a strongly run Supreme as well, depending on conditions.
You'll be going Ballymore. the only thing we talk about these horses like Envoy Lane, and I was going through my list, and the boys were saying that list is too long. You need to shorten it. But there's so many horses, and when we have this man here on the sofa where he can't get away, there's one horse I want
Doors
to know
over
about,
there.
and that's Durazo, a horse of Joseph's, that's owned by a man who likes winning Melbourne Cups in Lloyd Williams. But this horse, he cost a pretty penny, 410 grand, I think, at the sales, having won his point. But he looked like a horse with a very bright future when he won earlier this year.
Yeah, he was deadly, wasn't he? He was super. Now, knockout, good looking. You know, he was obviously very impressive in his point-to-point, but a lot of the reason why he made a lot of that money was he looked like such an athlete, and he looked like a horse that would go forward. Obviously took quite a bit of time to get him to the track for various reasons, but when he got there, geez, he was deadly. He was really, really good. But you don't want to hear me talk about him. We're soon enough going to have the man himself on the line.
I should have made that point right at the top of the show, obviously. But yeah, Joseph O'Brien, we will be joining very, very shortly to get the latest, not just on Durazo, but all of his stars. What a season he had. I mean, how long has he been going? 3 years?
Just over 3 years, yeah.
And last year went to the Cheltenham Festival with a handful of runners, really, and came away with 2 wins.
Yeah, and a couple of seconds as well. You know, it was a great festival. You know, we all know he technically had trained the Cheltenham winner.
Yeah.
In Ivanovic Gorbatov. That, you know, but he wants to do
Under
it
under his own name, we should
Yeah.
have said.
So,
Yeah.
And you know, I recall, you know, when he thought he had, you know, a reasonable team the year before, and came away empty-handed. And there's no place like the Cheltenham Festival to humble anyone. It's such a hard place. You know, it goes without saying, but it's such a hard place to have a winner. So the sense of satisfaction to nail one, never mind 2, you can imagine now it was pretty sweet.
It's horrible, that moment, you know, when you walk out. If you, like, I was lucky enough to go there with a lot of good rides for a lot of years. And when you walk out of there and it's dark and the lights are on, and all you can see is the paper whistling past you, like lads throwing away betting slips, and you're just thinking, I got to wait 12 months to try and get into that winner's enclosure.
To have another go.
It's a lonely place.
Yeah, very, very tough indeed. But Joseph O'Brien did particularly well last season there at the Cheltenham Festival. We will hear from Joseph O'Brien before too long. In fact, I think Joseph can join us live on the line right now. Are you there, Joseph?
Hi, lads.
Ah, fantastic. Listen, Joseph, we were just talking about Durazo there. Kevin's very excited about him, but I got the vibe from your comments on Kevin's stable tour on the website. You're pretty excited about this boy too.
Yeah, he's a very exciting horse. Obviously, it was an expensive purchase after he won his point-to-point, had a bit of time off, and he went to Punchestown last year. We thought just ready to run a nice race, and went and won very well. So he's a horse that we've been excited about over the summer, and looking forward to his prospects this winter. Yeah,
and I was hearing as well that he's come through some tough times, this horse.
Yeah, well, listen, he's had a couple of setbacks. He got an infection in his shoulder after when we didn't have him very long, and missed a good bit of time, and I spent a little while in the hospital in Feathered Equine, and all the vets there done a fantastic job with him, and he came back and showed that there was he had no ill effects of that winning in Punchestown. So he has to go and do it. He has to go and prove it over hurdles that he's a decent prospect, and go from there. He's won being realistic, he's won an ordinary bumper in good fashion. So now he has to go and prove that he's up to graded company, etc. But we're very hopeful.
And do you know where you'll be starting him off, Joseph, at the moment?
Not exactly. He'll have a few entries. There's a race in Gorn Park in a couple of weeks that we just have in the back of our minds. But he'll have entries at all the good tracks, and we'll get him started in a maiden hurdle, probably a 2 mile somewhere, and we'll go from there.
Okay, we'll run through a few more with you, Joseph, if we can. A Wave of the Sea was a winner for you just the other day, wasn't it, on his second go over hurdles?
Hasn't put in a really good round of jumping over hurdles yet. We think he's going to progress with racing. He pulled it out of the bag really the last day after making a mess of the last, and we think he's a nice prospect this year, 3-year-old hurling.
Good stuff. We were just talking about your Cheltenham Festival successes, which was remarkable, Joseph, wasn't it? I mean, because you didn't take a massive team. We all know what happened to poor old Sir Eric as well, and yet you came away with 2 winners from the festival. Band of Outlaws was one of them, winning the juvenile handicap hurdle. What's the plan for him this year?
Yeah, he had a break after Galway. He's not long back in work. I guess he has graded races and all the better handicaps open to him. Where exactly he'll start off yet, I'm not sure, but it'll be close enough to Christmas time before he runs. OK, so I'll keep an eye out for him. Durazo is another name I'm going to throw at you, Joseph, not least because I wonder what you're going to do with him this year, because you could do almost anything probably with Durazo. Yeah, he can. He progressed really well for us last year. Very versatile horse, likes a bit of juice in the ground. 2 miles plus. He was very good over hurdles and fences, so I'm not sure exactly what route we'll take. I wouldn't be against mixing and matching it a little bit again with him. But probably an angle that we haven't explored yet is maybe up in distance over fences. So that's something that we'll probably look to do at some stage.
OK. And your other festival winner, the Martin Pike winner, Early Doors, he's a chaser now, basically. Is that what you're going to stick with now?
Yeah, he ran well. He's only over fences in Galway. He had a break after Galway, and I'd imagine he'll probably go chasing. Go back chasing once he's ready to run again. He won't be out for a little while, but I'd imagine it'll be chases for now.
I can see on my tablet here that we've had a question from a viewer about Le Richebourg. I haven't got it in front of me. Maybe it'll pop up on the screen, but I would guess it would be when and if we'll see him.
Yeah, hopefully you will, Sean. He just came back to us last week, so it will take our time with him and see what happens. So he's obviously was a very good novice. It's a big step up into open company now, but he's a horse we're very excited about, and we'll take it week by week with him. And I look forward to getting him back on the track. Hopefully, I guess. It might be, if we're lucky, it might be Christmas time, but we're not going to rush him. If it's after Christmas, that's fine.
Joseph, you had a few good 4-year-olds last year, and Fakir Dudari is one who kept pretty lofty company, finished off with that really good second at Aintree as well. You know, what's the plans with him this year?
Yeah, he is. Mick was one of the best 4-year-olds around last year. Probably never really got his ground after Cheltenham in November. I'd imagine there's a good chance he'll go novice chasing this year. Likes to get his toe in a little bit, and he's an exciting horse to go down that route this season.
Did particularly well, Joseph, last year, obviously with the sort of juvenile division. And another of our viewers said, "Have you got any exciting 3-year-olds coming your way from the sort of Ballydoyle operation? Have you got some exciting new talent coming through from the flat?"
We have some horses. Sorry, unfortunately, not as strong as last year. But we have a couple of juveniles to get started in the next 2 weeks. But we'll be waiting to see how they get on and go from there. But we don't have anything very high profile, unfortunately.
That's interesting, Joe. I mean, it was a terrific year last year, wasn't it? And your best national hunt season. So when you look across the piece, though, because obviously some of those horses are now maturing and going over fences and all the rest of it, what can we expect this year? Is it realistic to expect that you could match or surpass what you did last year?
Probably not. I'm probably down a little bit on numbers with my national hunt string this season. So we'll probably do well to do as well as we did last year. But we'll do our best. We have a nice quality bunch, and we're looking forward to the season. Obviously, our kind of winter horses are just starting to have their first runs of the preparation in the kind of coming weeks and in the last few weeks, and it's exciting times for them.
Joseph, you've got a young lad riding for you at the moment who I know quite well, young Oakley Brown. I saw he rode another winner for you the other day.
Yeah, nice chap, very good rider, Mick. I'm very lucky to have a great bunch of riders in the yard every day, amateurs and professionals and conditionals as well. And Oakley is a chap who's going to do very well this year. He's won on two winners from a handful of rides for me, maybe even three or four rides. But yeah, nice chap and a good rider, and he's going to do very well this year, hopefully.
Oh, keep an eye out on him. Just a couple of chasers as well to touch on with you, Joseph, while we have you. Us and Them, who of course was mixing it with the top novices around last year, and I know he's come out and run well this year. What's the plan for him from here?
Yeah, he done very well last year. I think he was second in 4 or 5 Grade 1s. Ran a lovely race, and he's come back in Gorn Park. And he might go to Cheltenham in November for the 2.5 mile handicap chase. He's an exciting horse, and hopefully we can at least win a good pot with him this year. And if we can win a Grade 1, that'd be great.
Bet Victor Gold Cup. That's in a few weeks.
That's the one.
Yeah, good stuff. Mortal, similar sorts of targets for him. Decent handicap chases.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit behind us and Them in his fitness. Probably something like a Paddy Power would be a nice early season target for him at Leopardstown at Christmas. We think he'll be well able to hold his own and in good staying handicap chases this year, and he's an exciting horse for sure.
Okay. Midnight Run, we should mention as well, because I know Kevin's been through some of these with you, and he was quite keen on him. What can you tell us about plans for him?
Yeah, absolutely. He's pretty much ready to start off in the maiden hurdle in the next few weeks. Was one of our best bumper horses last season. Unfortunately, didn't get a shot at a Grade 1 bumper because he had a little setback. But he's a very exciting horse, and he seems to jump well. And yeah, he'll go novice hurling in the next few weeks.
Speak Easy, I'm being asked to ask you about as well, because he is on my list, and I've neglected to ask about him in the JP.
Yeah, he missed all last year. He had a setback. Now, the way this season turned out, with the ground being so quick for most of the season, he wouldn't have been very busy anyway. He'll go novice chasing, all being well. Likes a bit of juice in the ground, and he's an exciting horse that would be hopeful could make it into graded company and stay in novice chases.
Good stuff. When you get up in the mornings and it's pouring with rain, Joseph, which one horse in your jumps team really gets you out of bed with a spring in your step as we look forward to the campaign?
I suppose we've touched on a lot of the nice ones. Another nice bumper horse off the top of my head from last year was a horse called Embittered. He is a fame and glory. He won well in Punchestown, ran very well a couple of times after that. The best bumpers around. He's another horse that we're excited about going novice hurling this season.
That's Embittered in the Gigginstown colours. Good stuff. Well, that's nice. It's nice that things get you excited. Are you off to the Breeders' Cup, Joseph?
Yeah, flying tomorrow. Just got back from Newmarket today. Obviously, the horse and training sales are on there, and going to the Breeders' Cup tomorrow. So it's exciting few weeks. Okay.
Have your horses already headed out?
The horses are there. They're in their quarantine at the moment. So they seem to have travelled over well. Obviously, Iridessa, our main one there in the fillies and mares. She seems to have taken the journey well, and it's a difficult place to compete. But if you're not in, you can't win. So we're going to give it our best shot.
Well, you're doing all right in your travels so far. Melbourne Cup's not too shabby, is it, in your first few seasons? Look, Joseph, I appreciate you're a really busy fellow at the moment and travelling all over the place, so we appreciate you giving us the time between now and the Melbourne Cup ahead of the jump season. Hope it's another good campaign.
Pleasure, Sean. Thanks, lads. Have a good night.
Cheers, Joseph.
Joseph O'Brien. That was interesting what he said there, Kevin, that maybe it's not quite the strength that he had last season going into campaign in terms of numbers and stuff like that?
Yeah, numerically, definitely so. You know, look, it's no secret that the flat side of the operation has probably done that, whereas the jumps is doing that just a little bit. You know, and I suspect it'll probably follow that trend going forward, but it'll be a steady thing. And you know, in a perfect world, I'd imagine if you asked Joseph, he'd say he'd like to have the National Hunt side as a boutique sort of arrangement, if you know what I mean. You know, quality over quantity.
Yeah.
And I think there's a real nice bunch of horses there, but you know, it's this time of year.
Yeah.
You often think you have an awful lot of nice horses in October, but by the end of March, it's a different story.
Well, also, again, it's that thing that we're talking about in this novice hurdle division. You know, you're talking about bumper horses, some of whom you think are going to be world beaters over hurdles and they won't, and some who might have been quite ordinary in bumps or quite ordinary on the flat who turn out to be brilliant over hurdles.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting experience because I keep all the stuff I write, you know, and it's quite an interesting exercise to look back on the beginning of the season stable tours by the end of the season.
Absolutely.
And so many horses that you thought that is a real nice prospect, and it just doesn't work out. It happens an awful lot, you know. So.
I keep them as well because I'm very lucky. I get asked to quite a lot of trainers' open days, you know, at the beginning of the season.
Yep.
You get Nicky has a book, that Philip Hobbs has a book, that Paul Nichols has a book that he does, and it's quite interesting. I keep them all, so you go back and look at horses 3 years down the line, 2 years down the line, 4 years down the line, and you look at what they've said, what their targets are, and what they're hoping for, and very, very rarely do they match up to what you think. Something goes wrong, something happens.
It works the other way as well.
Absolutely.
Talking about Frodon at the start of last year, but then they thought they might progress and win some.
It's
nice
going to be a struggle,
chases. But the horse just took off and kept on taking off.
Yeah,
goes both ways. Lots of surprises. Let's remind ourselves of what we've come up with as novice hurdlers, either to follow or to take high order to follow, in my case, in the shape of Baddesley. And as I say, there's a few of these Baddesleys with Chris. I'm really pleased for Chris Gordon because he's a lovely fellow to chat to and a good trainer. And I think he's getting some nice horses from those owners. So that's good to see. So watch out for any of those Baddesleys. But Baddesley itself caught my eye. And you both agree, basically, on your other two hurdlers. Because if it sounds like both of you would have had the other one.
Kevin could have had Enville and I could have had Gypsy Island, but we've done it this way around. So either way, we're both in the same. We've got 1 foot in each camp, I think.
Well, given what we've just said about how unpredictable a season can be, that we're spreading the ownership there of the Gypsy Island and Envoy. Alan's selections there between Mick and Kevin. We're going to move on now. Thanks again to Joseph O'Brien for joining us on the line there. Much appreciated. We're going to turn our attention to the novice chase division next. And again, this was one where, Kevin, I think you and I might have had a bit of an arm wrestle over Lorena. I'm a big fan of hers as well, but you go first.
Yeah, Lorena, Willie has confirmed that the plan is to go chasing with her now.
In your stable tour on attheraces.com.
Yeah, sure, we'll call that an exclusive, will we?
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
Scoop Blake, we're calling you from now.
Well, I'd be like Willie, he'll change his mind in a week. But I've always really liked this mare. Look, and she's not dark in any way. She was one of the most high-profile mares in training for the last couple of years. But, you know, as well as she did over hurdles last season, for me, to briefly be general, with novice chasers, for me, I put so much emphasis on their first couple of starts over fences, just their technique over a fence. Because you can have a horse that you think will make a nice chaser, but they don't. They don't have quite the technique when it comes down to it. But sometimes watching a horse hurdle, they give you a strong indication by the shape they make over the hurdle that the transition to fences should be smooth. And Lorena, for me, all last season, looked like that. You're always looking at her going, you're giving those a little bit more air than ideal for what you're doing now. But if you're given a chance to jump the big black ones later on, it could be a different story. And I had a bit of a slagging match over and back with old Rixie, Declan Rix, about this mare. He feels this mare is more of a possibly a 2.5 miler.
Yep.
That type. I think she'll be a 2 miler. I don't think she ever really lacked in pace, but I just think her jumping over hurdles just didn't suit her doing that job.
She'd nearly favourite for a champion hurdle, so she's not slow.
And I just strongly suspect that she'll be quite electric over a fence.
The thing is, though, just to try and quantify the difference, and just to put the meat on the bones that Kevin is saying, when you ride a horse down to a hurdle, there's a long stride, or else you can just let them fiddle. Whereas over a fence, it's a bit more definite. It's like, there it is, go and get it. Short stride, come back here a little bit and pop. So those sort of horses, they don't second guess. Whereas a filly like her, she always looked like she was unsure what to do with the hurdles, and for that reason, she almost gave them too much air. You watched her when she jumped, she almost propped a little bit. Whereas you get those proper hurdlers and they just do that.
Yeah.
Whereas proper chasers almost go to it and bounce out over the obstacle.
So, are you saying that you agree with Kevin's analysis?
Very much
that
so.
She should probably be better over a fence?
She just looks like her technique is better suited to fences than it is to hurdles. Because every time you watched her, you kept thinking, she's not a champion hurdler, she's spending too long in the air.
Yeah.
And she got to 159 over hurdles. She's going to be getting the mare's allowance against the geldings. You know, I would be disappointed if she's not a better chaser. You know, I know we're taking a lot on trust there, but I personally would be disappointed if she's not a better chaser.
We were chatting
and if she's
before.
better than that,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, we
wins
were chatting
the
about. Well, we were chatting about the arc, and
Yeah.
I said you always want a 160 hurdler, don't you, to go, and you pointed out she's not far off that. And actually, with the mare's allowance, she's bang there, isn't she, Lorena? We'll have to wait and see what her trip is and whether they stay over fence. A lot will depend on, as you say, on that first 1 or 2 starts.
Yeah, and I just can't wait to see her. You know, I
But if she runs over 2 first time and absolutely blows them away, you wouldn't then be tempted to go 2.5, would you?
yeah, well, look, we know she stays, but I think a lot of it, and Willie, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think a lot of it comes down to jumping technique. You know, footpad was one. Footpad's an interesting comparison because he tried 3 miles as a hurdler. And he had not a dissimilar technique. He was always a little bit big at his hurdles, and you looked at him and you said, oh, there's a fair chance he will make a chaser. Went over fences, and you know, in that novice season, he was an electric jumper of a fence, and because of that, he ended up staying at 2 miles, even though we knew he stayed further.
Yeah.
And I suspect Lorena might be a similar case. Again, we're taking a bit on trust, but by God, I'll be excited the first day she's
A lot of
decked
those
to
good
run
ones,
over
even
fences.
with staying pedigrees, horses that end up being Gold Cup horses, and still Arkle horses as novices, aren't they? In that first.
And My Way to Sols, and
Yeah.
he won a...
Yeah. The other thing, I didn't have your analysis of her jumping technique, but I'm sure Willie Mullins said at some point, if only there was a mare's chase at the festival, that's what he would want to
don't get
aim
me
at.
started.
Next year.
Well,
Not next year,
luckily for us,
2021.
we want to see her in the Arkle. That's not in time for her, so hopefully we'll see her go and contest an Arkle before that mare's chase comes in. So Lorena, you're quite keen on her as well, by the sound of it. So
everything about her over hurdles said that she was going to be better over fences, and I think, you know, Kevin's hit the nail on the head with that.
Good stuff. I'm going to throw in, again, something slightly different, again, something from our own experience here on Sky Sports Racing. This is a horse called Windsor Avenue for Brian Ellison. We were at Sedgefield when this horse made his chasing debut. Not only does he win by a pretty emphatic margin, he's asked to go and put this race to bed, which he does fairly emphatically. Jumped a tiny bit to his right once or twice, but otherwise was really good, I thought, jumping-wise, Mick. And what really struck me was how... He couldn't sleep the night before, apparently, Brian Ellison. And this is not a man to sort of be, you know, overawed by things and get overexcited, but he is very excited about this horse.
Yeah, but they've always thought, you know, again, we keep harping on about this, but it's true. And the great thing about when you go jump racing as opposed to flat racing is, you wait till you see this horse over a hurdle. You wait till you see this horse over a fence. There's almost like 3 steps up. Yeah. And this fella's now taken the last step. And Brian has always said, you wait till you see this fella on the last step. Yeah. His hurdling was good. He ran in some nice races and he got beaten by some nice horses. But this is definitely what they've been waiting for. The horse back in third that was toiling in his wake is a horse called Western Rider, who was good enough to win decent hurdles, contest some top handicaps, 150 rated hurdler. So, you know, he's not beating mugs, and he just basically laughed at them.
Yeah, no, it was a really, really exciting debut. And it's good to see these strong performers in the...
Was he the start of the Brian Ellison fly? Because I think he's had, is it 7 or 8 of his last 9 runners have won over
he
jumps?
was already... they were already going well before this boy came out. But yeah, they're absolutely on fire, aren't they? Ran up a sequence in recent weeks. So I'm throwing him into the mix. And what else have we got there?
I've basically got a little. I've got a choice almost of novice chasers, and it was almost a case of which one do I do I pin my hopes to?
Well, we're sticking one on the graphic, but you can tell us about the others as well.
I've actually got quite a few. Dickie Diver is a horse of JP McManus's that Nicky Henderson's trains. He was a horse who finished 4th in the Albert Bartlett. He's a horse that definitely looks like he's a real, almost like an embryonic 3-mile chaser. We're seeing him here. This is him winning at Chepstow, and this is a really, really nice performance. Aidan Coleman was on him this day, and he just laughed at them a little bit. But if you look at this horse,
An extravagant sort of action, isn't he?
He's tall. He just looked a little bit gangly and almost like a schoolboy that just wasn't ready for, you know, the big games. He ran a great race to be 4th in the Albert Bartlett, but this horse stays well, and you know, he just looks like a typical chaser, and you know, he's the sort of horse with that summer on his back, you know, he's bound to do better. But the horse ultimately who I pinned my hopes to was the horse that won the Albert Bartlett, Minella Indo of Henry de Bromhead's. You know, this horse then backed up and won at Punchestown. When people thought, Kevin, he was going to get beat at Punchestown, he still went and won. And I think this horse is he's obviously very, very smart. And there was no fluke about that win at the Festival at Cheltenham.
I'm smiling here because this fellow was my number 2.
Okay.
It was either going to be Lorena or him. And geez, I fell in love with this horse at Cheltenham. I thought he looked an absolute weapon. He had no right to win that race. How lit up he got. He was so free
and he
the
was
whole
keen,
way. It was unbelievable. And for him to grind it out the way he did, and you know, we see this tendency again and again in racing. When a horse, that was a big upset that day. He was 1,000,000 to 1, and it's a human tendency, I think, that when something like that happens, people don't want to believe it. They want to think, oh, you know, that was a fluke. How could he? If he was a likely winner of that race, how could we have let him go off at 50 to 1?
Yeah.
So he ended up going off, you know, quite a big price at Punchestown, considering he'd won the Albert Bartlett. And again, he was better again there for me. Again, little bit in Rachel's hands.
The Laho, the horse that they have, Willie's, that was back to beat him again. He was the talking horse on the morning of the Albert Bartlett. This is the one, and he ran a super race at Cheltenham, and I think everybody expected him to turn the tables. And at Punchestown, it didn't happen.
Well, it looked likely for a few strides, but Minella Indo, you know, for all that spark that he has, he clearly stays really, really well. And he came back and ultimately won with his ears pricked, idling in the end. And again, I'm looking at my notes here in front of me. I make very similar notes about his jumping that I did about Lorena. You know, bit chasery, you know, jump solid. Those are, you know, ways I describe that are a little bit airy.
I was going to say, in terms of how he's going to take to fences, what's your instinct? You just answered that.
Oh, absolutely. This lad's tailor-made for chasing. He really is. And you know, Henry de Bromhead has really grabbed the bull by the horns the last few seasons. Quality of his horses is right up there now, and you know, to be matching strides with the Willie Mullenses and the Gordon Elliots as well every week, you know, I think, you know, that's a huge feather in his cap.
Yeah, again, it slipped below the radar a little bit because, you know, Irish National Hunt Racing, so much of it is about Willie Mullins and Gordon Elliott. Henry de Bromhead had 98 winners in Ireland over jumps last
Unbelievable.
In that context as
That's
well.
some tally. And, you know, it's only, you know, again, we all remember Gigginstown pulling out of Willie Mullins's, but a month earlier, Alan Potts had pulled out of Henry de Bromhead's.
But he lost Size and John a Gold Cup.
Size and John Super Sunday.
Yeah.
And, you know, not only has he, you know, survived that, if you will, he's doubled his tally of winners in the space of 3 years. You know, he's had 4 Cheltenham Festival winners in the last 3 seasons. You know, he's absolutely flying. And this is a Henry horse.
Yeah.
You know, if you wanted to put your money on a trainer translating an exciting novice herder to make that jump, and of course, like he tell you himself, it doesn't work every time.
Of course.
But if you wanted to have a man on your side to make a smooth
chasing in
transition,
particular. Yeah.
he'd be the one you'd want them with. And this fella, I'm super excited about this fella. I think he's a cracker. I can't wait to see him over a fence.
Excellent.
Because he just might, as sparky as he's been over hurdles, the fences, they might just send him the right way in that regard. A little bit more respect for the whole thing. And we know he stays well, so, you know, RSA horse all over.
Yeah, absolutely. Even Henry de Bromhead can't make everything jump brilliantly, but so many of his horses do seem to
I tell you, you know, there's a lot of reasoning behind that, Sean. And it's something that maybe not enough of emphasis is put on it. Heather, his wife, is a brilliant rider herself, The horses do an awful lot of flat work,
okay.
an awful lot of being held together, getting all the right muscles working in the right way. Horses do a lot of figure of 8, trotting, cantering, basically toning those muscles, getting the horses in the right shape. If you get a horse galloping along and they're galloping along like this, the right muscles aren't being used. Whereas if you have a horse being held together, being exercised properly, they will tone the right muscles. And there's an awful lot of emphasis put on that with Heather and Henry.
That's
and I think you can see the dividends of paying.
Yeah,
and there might be nothing in it, Fitzy, now, but I just wonder, is that correlated with keeping the horses sounder almost? Because I know this could be complete noise and mean nothing, but at the start of every season, I do these stable tours for ATR, and the way it works is I go away and put together a list of 25 horses that I want to ask them about. Right? And the way of these things, you're talking about National Hunt horses, I'll go to the trainers and I'll ask them one by one the 25 horses. And with different trainers, you tend to see more of it. But generally, you're going to be missing a few. There's a few that are out for the season, that something has gone wrong, they've had a setback. I look back on it the other day when I was getting ready for this. Henry's Bromhead, last 3 years, every single one. And again, might be nothing in it, but you just wonder.
Yeah. It's not scientific, but it is really interesting. And a couple of trainers said a similar thing. I was up at Sue and Harvey Smith's recently, and they do a lot of schooling.
Yeah.
But with the same logic, Harvey Smith says they're using these particular muscles. He said, if you go in the gym and you're lifting a weight and you repeat it like these, the first 20 times you can do it fine, but when you get to 40 and 50 and 60 you wonder whether you're going to manage to bring the weight up at all. You have to get your horses using those same muscles, getting that strength in the right places.
Relevant conditioning.
To do the job.
It's interesting. Again, it's a difficult thing to test, but that would be something. And that's Henry de Bromhead is far from the only person doing that. But I suspect there's more emphasis on it there than the majority of big yards, certainly.
Yeah.
And you just wonder, is that maybe one of the unintended positive consequences of what they do in that regard?
Interesting stuff. Anyone else on your short
Okay,
list?
look, I have a lot. I have a big list here. I have a big list. Bright Forecast.
Yes. Yeah.
Is one. Like Ben Pauling's apple of his eye.
Yeah.
This horse last year, again, bit like the gangly schoolboy. Is this fella going to mature? Well, he certainly looked like he came good at the back end, finishing place in the Ballymore, running on really strongly. He is a really smart horse. Yeah. And it's funny, you ask certain people, like Nico de Boinville rode this horse. He's been lucky enough to sit on quite a lot of nice horses at Nicky Henderson's. And I was going through a few weeks ago, horses to follow for the season. And he said to me, don't forget Bright Forecast. Yeah. Because you, as a rider, you sometimes feel something when you ride a horse that you think, this horse has got it. Yeah. And, it's like little things. I always remember 2 horses that I rode. When up Farringdon Road, Nicky's Gallop is one of the toughest gallops there is, and there's only ever been 2 horses that I've ridden up that gallop where I've got off them and I've ridden them in more than one gallop and I've thought I've gone too slow. Normally every trainer says you've gone too fast because the horses just they're all gasping for oxygen and they get to the 8.
New jockeys want to know what they've got.
But these 2, Blue Royal was one of them, a horse owned by Lynn Wilson and Nicky Train that I finished 3rd in the Champion Hurdle on. And the other one was Looks Like Trouble, who won a Gold Cup. They're the only 2 horses that I've ever got off and thought should have gone quicker. Yeah. Just naturally very talented. And, you just get the impression with this Bright Forecast that he could be one of those horses that's just naturally talented, that's going to get better. Okay. And I think for that reason, he definitely should be on everybody's shortlist.
Okay, well, we'll keep him in mind as well. Now, we can't promise that we can give you a racehorse of Bright Forecast quality, but we can give you a good day at the races, courtesy of Ascot Racecourse. There's a chance to win a couple of tickets for the National Hunt meeting of your choice during the National Hunt season at Ascot. I love going jump racing at Ascot during the winter. It's a great place to go jump racing, proper fences, proper racetrack. All the details are on the Facebook page. So on the At The Races Facebook page, in the comments there, you can get involved with that and have a chance of winning a couple of tickets for an Ascot meeting of your choice during the Jumps campaign. Let's just confirm those novice chase picks from the 3 of us here on the sofa. I'm throwing in Brian Ellison's Windsor Avenue. Manila Indo, we've managed to pin Mick down to 1 reluctantly, but he's given you a short list that's a bit longer. And Lorena, we all like her, so we'll see how she fares over fences during the course of the season. Right, next category we've called established hurdlers, and I've interpreted that fairly liberally, as you're about to find out. But non-novice hurdler is how I've interpreted that. I'll get to mine in a minute. Bouverdere, Mick has thrown. Let's start with that, Mick. Let's start with Bouverdere.
Why not?
People look at that and say, well, he got beaten, you know, in the champion hurdle, it all went pear-shaped. And can he come back and recapture his glories?
He fell in the champion hurdle, so he might have won.
Yeah. You've got to jump them, though, haven't you?
He might have won. He might have won, Sean.
This day he was brilliant, wasn't he?
This is the day. Did he break Sam Crow's heart?
Well, that's one way of reading what happened for the rest of the season, isn't it? Or maybe Sam Crow just wasn't as good as we all thought he was going to be over hurdles.
Wow.
We'll come to him over fences.
But this, I was at Newbury watching this, and I was a very worried Nicky Henderson.
Yeah.
Because I was there that week, and he was worried. A lot of his horses had all been needing to run. You know, I've spoken about driving up Farringdon Road and seeing the discs out. There was no discs out last year.
Yeah.
So this horse he needed that.
Yep.
And he thought, today is the day he's going to get beaten. And he was so impressive.
What about, though, Mick, that he did hit one there, didn't he? And then, of course, he fell in the champion hurdle. And he'd been such a slick and brilliant hurdler. Is there a little doubt in your mind that maybe the hurdling has just come apart a little bit?
The mighty Isterbrak fell, Sean.
Yeah.
He still came back and won. A lot of them can come back. And some of those really good hurdlers, they are millimetres away from going down. That's how low they jump. That's why they are able to win champion hurdles, because they are so slick through the air. I'm hoping he's learned from that and he won't do it again, because he looked really good when he won at Punchestown. He was almost a little bit not quite the forgotten horse, but you know, the race might have fallen apart a little bit, but he still won, and he still won very comfortably. It's still there, and he's not one that I'm going to give up on, because who knows how good. Like, OK, Classical Dream is the one they're all talking about. This horse is now favourite for the champion hurdle on the back of that win in the Supreme, but Bouverdere has been there and done it, and I just think the way things are, that champion hurdle picture is still very cloudy, Kevin.
It is, and like, look, I've always been on the other side of the fence with Bouverdere personally. You know, my view coming into last season, he'd won 2 champion hurdles that were maybe a bit lacking in depth. You know, beat my Tenter Ewers the first year, who was I think about 26 years of age at the time, and then he fell in against Mellon.
He finished second in 3 champion hurdles.
Yeah. Oh, it's a magnificent horse, but he was 26 at the time. Time Bouverdere beat him.
Some of us put him up each way for that race.
Age is not a barrier.
Yeah.
But, you know, look, that day against Sam Crow, I thought that was the day, right? Finally, you've put in a big 170-plus performance. That's you. Yeah. But I think, you know, with the benefit of hindsight, you know, Sam Crow wasn't at the time what we felt he was. Somerville Boy ended up being very disappointing. And
I tell you what about Mick's point though? I know it's like if my auntie had, you know what.
Yeah.
But if he'd stayed on his feet, he'd have won that race, wouldn't he? Because both the mares ran poorly in the champion hurdle last year, so he would have won.
Well,
and now we'd be looking at a triple champion hurdler.
Suddenly you'd be thinking, Al, how do you justify saying he's a poor champion hurdle winner when he's won 3 of them?
Yeah, my view with Bouverdere is I think he's a 165 hurdler at his best, and of course that puts him right up there with the very best. But my feeling for much of his, you know, in the latter stages of his career, we'll say, is, you know, top class hurdler, clearly. Probably the best around for the last couple of years.
I'd like to remind you.
He's only 8, but I just think a horse with the CV that he's put together, which is a wonderful CV, I just don't know if personally the peak ability necessarily matches up with the CV. But Fitzy's right. The division this season, it's windy. It's windy.
I was going to say, when you look through that division, what's going to beat him?
Look, if he comes back as a 165 horse again, that'll be enough to put him right up at the top of the division, and it'll be up to something like Classical Dream to elevate themselves beyond him. So, you know, I'm not saying the horse can't win a champion hurdle, but if there's something that'll run higher than 165, they'll beat him. That'll be my view.
Okay. Is there one though?
There's a few candidates. But right now, there's none that is beyond that at the minute.
What have you stuck up for us in this division then?
Well, the first argument we're
talking about champion hurdlers, but it could be any distance.
How we pronounce this horse's name.
I think you might be right, because you gave me a good explanation for your pronunciation, which is
Salger.
Salger.
Yeah. I could be totally wrong though. Of course, you look at it, he's a
Like
French-bred
Soldier,
horse. You'd assume he's Sal d'A.
Yeah.
But he's by Soldier Hollow out of Salve Evita. Salger?
You've made a good case for it.
It doesn't flow off the tongue as well, but it might be correct.
Yeah.
I dare you to get away with that one when he's run that old toy.
We'll conclude each to their own on that one. But again, look, you look at this division, and Classical Dream is the obvious one you could put up, and he's a horse I really like, and he could be the one. But you're trying to find a little bit of potential X factor. Again, that is a little bit less obvious.
Yep.
And this fella, you couldn't claim he's completely dark, but. We haven't seen a whole lot of him. We've seen him once in a year and a half.
Trip, what do we think?
I'd see him as a 2-miler.
Yep.
He was a very good juvenile without being one of the best, but he came back from time off. And you watch that race at Naas this time last year, and he was going to beat Espoir d'Allen, I think, with Mr. Adjudicator out the back of the telly in third. And that level of performance, given what Espoir d'Allen obviously did afterwards, would kind of prick your ears and say, ooh, maybe you could be the one if you come back in healthy and progressive. He's only a baby. He's only 5 still,
Yep, 20-1 for the champion hurdle.
Can I just ask, though, what about Classical Dream? Do you think this horse is better than Classical Dream?
Well, right now, no. Classical Dream is well in advance of him, I think, in terms of what we've seen so far. But, don't forget that Classical Dream, while he is technically... he was a novice last season, but he wasn't really. He was a second season novice last season. He had plenty of experience early on in France, and we assume always that novices will find some progression in between their novice year and their first year in open company. But it's probably we probably should expect less with him because he has that more miles on the clock. As a 3-year-old in France. But look, I loved what he did last year. He's got a great attitude. He lovely way of going, well able to battle, well able to jump, clearly showed a very high level of ability in Grade 1 company in the second half of last season. But he does need to step up to get to the Bouverdaire level. Look, it appears that he'll start off in the Morgiana. And look, if he's going to be a champion hurdler, he probably needs to go and win there.
Just to I was just looking at the times as well today and looking at it. It was only, I think, 0.5 difference between the Supreme and the champion hurdle. So that kind of gives you an idea of where you are. I know Espoir d'Allen won, quite easily when winning the champion hurdle, but it just shows you, there was very little between the 2 times of the races.
Yep, so strong contender and a big price if you want to take an anti-post chance. I struggled with this division for a lot of the reasons we just talked about. You look around and think, where is the emerging talent? So I've taken a slightly different view. This is a filly, and she's only 3, who I couldn't fit in anywhere else because she's not a novice hurdler. She won back in the summer, and then she won again in France just a few weeks ago, probably more than that now, a couple of months ago, wasn't it, for Emmett Mullins. And she won, this was a listed hurdle, I think, wasn't it? But it was a very, very good listed hurdle, and she's got graded hurdlers in behind her, horses who've already won graded hurdles in France. Fujimoto Flyer, trained by Emmett Mullins, and what you can't see from this video is that she absolutely pulled like a train for the first mile at least of this race, and if you stop the tape at halfway, you say there's no way she can do what she's doing in this race and still hit the frame, never mind go and win. And not only does she win, she absolutely routs them in the end. I was chatting to Lauren about this, saying, is there anything else for her in France? He said, yeah, there's another one of those coming up, a really good graded, about €100,000 graded hurdle coming up.
November? It's in November, isn't it?
Yeah, it's next week. Next week or the week after? Yeah, next week, isn't it? Yeah, at Auteuil. So that's a big chance for her to go in again. You were saying somebody was telling me they might have sold her, I think, but I think she's still with Emmett.
Yeah, I think she's staying with Emmett, but will be in different colours next time.
It was just a freakish performance, though. I'm not quite sure where it came from because she wasn't a world beater in her few runs on the flat.
No, 70.
Yeah.
But, a Japanese-bred filly ending up running in juvenile hurdle, it's a mad one. But look, great piece of placing by Emmett Mullins, you'd have to say, because with her, having won the hurdling debut, to get a bit of black type was a huge thing. And I'm sure you're probably going over, if you'd asked Emmett in connections, they'd probably sneak into third, massive result. And then she goes and does that.
Absolutely.
So it was a brave and you know, it was outside the box to do what they did, and they've got well rewarded. And like you say, she looked with a fair bit of talent there, didn't she?
It was freakish, and I've watched it a couple of times since. Every time I look at it, I think that's extraordinary that you've managed to do that and hit the line as hard as she did. And she's a few strides past the line, her ears are pricked and she's looking around. One of the other fillies has come out and won since in graded company. It's all there. It looks like the real deal. So we will see how she fares, Fujimoto Fly. A little bit of a different angle on that because I struggled. I'd love to see Bouvier come back.
Yeah.
I'm a massive Bouvier fan, so I hope you're right, Mick, that we haven't seen the last of the best of Bouvier. We will see. Now, established chasers is our next division. These are horses who have been around for at least a season in these cases. And look at this, the RSA race is here. The only one missing, sadly, is top of the game, who's not from the front three, of course, who's got to take some time out. But Kevin's gone with Delta Work, and I've gone with Santini. They probably don't need too much explaining. And you've gone Altior and Presenting Percy.
Yeah.
I mean, you're determined to shoehorn all these horses in, aren't you? Because you can't choose.
Just doesn't like playing by the rules.
Yeah, I just make up my own rules.
Okay, let's
Well, can I go with...
let's start with you, Mick.
Okay,
because
right.
This might take some working out.
Right,
so come
okay.
on.
So I'm going to go Presenting Percy first.
Before you do, somebody tweeted or Facebooked us a question about Presenting Percy, and you will know who you are. It might pop up on the screen, I'm not sure. But effectively saying, have we all forgotten about Presenting Percy? Is that where you're kind of coming from?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because have we all forgotten that this horse went off favourite for the Gold Cup, the blue ribbon of steeplechasing,
Yeah.
and everybody seems to have like, oh, let's not, he's gone.
Yeah.
He's not, you know, Pat Kelly, I saw him and he was, you know, I know he's an aloof character anyway, but I saw him after the race at Cheltenham and like he was ashen faced and he said, I'd love to start this season over again.
Well, it was everything went wrong, didn't it?
Yeah.
So that's the question. It was from Emmett. Presenting Percy, 14-1. Discuss, forgotten horse. And he's forgotten for a reason, which is that, of course, he disappointed in that race after this very, long absence, and he didn't have the season.
He'd had a lot of things go wrong, and every time they were trying to get him ready, something didn't quite work, and then the ground was too quick, and he wanted to run, and then he couldn't run. There was a race he could have run in, but he didn't want to run, and it just didn't happen for him. And
Did you get the feeling that they wished that they'd just rolled the dice a few times?
But look, I think it's like everything, but it's like we said at the start of the show. The ground last season was quick in places. There was some horses that people wished they hadn't run, that they did run and wished they hadn't. Presenting Percy's team didn't run and probably wish that they had. Yeah. But they've still got a sound horse. Yeah. And that's the difference. It's so much easier to think, I wished we'd run, when you're looking at your horse as he pulls out of the stable the next morning, ready to go off and do his exercise. Yeah. If you're a trainer or an owner and you walk in and you put your hands down a horse's tendon 2 days after it's run and it's got a leg, who's kicking themselves then? Yeah. When you've still got quite a lot of the season to go. Yeah. And that's what happened to them. Pat Kelly did not want to be walking into that box, running his fingers down that tendon and feel that little lump. And it's basically almost like a little lump in a tube of toothpaste. It's just a little blemish that hasn't been there before. Suddenly you think, my finger's deceiving me. Run your fingers down again, and you think, that's not normal. Sir Mark Prescott used to make his assistants blindfold. Pick the horses, put them in, run your fingers down the horse's legs and tell me what horse it is. Because it's an art. Yeah. People like Oakley Brown, they could tell you what every horse is by running their fingers down their tendons. Nicky Henderson, the same thing. And they do not want to feel a blemish because when you scan it, it just confirms what you already know. With top of the game, you're talking about established chasers and you guys are talking about last year's RSA. There's the winner. Yeah. He's out. Yeah. Clifford Baker goes in one night, runs his fingers down, an abnormality. Yeah. Brings Paul in, Paul goes, don't like that. Scan it the next morning, boom, out for the season. Yeah. You know, it was a horrible time for them with presenting Percy, but let's not forget how good he is. Alboom Photo was beaten when coming down in the RSA. Who was the winner? Presenting Percy.
And, you know, you put two and two together with this horse. We know the situation. Pat Kelly doesn't talk. He goes out of his way not to talk. But, you know, you go by actions. And a feature of presenting Percy the previous 2 seasons had been how aggressively campaigned he was and how daringly campaigned he was. He only ran twice last season. That tells you'd love to hear Pat Kelly talk you through every thought that he has about the horse all season and every up and down, but you just get the impression they were never really happy. They were never really happy. That's why he didn't run. He's seemingly come back lame from Cheltenham, you know. And like Mick says, if you want to answer that question I was asked, is he a forgotten horse? Go back and watch the RSA.
Yeah.
Go back and watch it. It was just immense what he did that day. And what we've seen since in terms of the horses that he was absolutely destroying, what they've done since, you know, if anything, it's boosted it since it actually happened. You know, this horse is one of the most talented in training for sure. And now the question is, can we get him back?
Yes.
He hasn't had, that we know of, you know, a serious injury like getting a leg that would potentially diminish him. So, you know, we have to assume until we see otherwise that he's okay.
Yeah.
And you know, you can't forget about him because you can't forget about a horse with that much talent.
He went off 3-1 favourite or thereabouts, didn't he, for the Gold
Yeah.
Cup, and you can back him at 14-1, as Emmett says in his text there. So if you want to take a chance, you know you're getting a price, and we will see whether he comes back. But at his best, he's brilliant. We're going to come back to Altior because there's a lot to say about Altior. So before we do that, we touched on the RSA. We've both gone for placed horses from the RSA. You've gone for Delta Work, Kevin.
I have, yeah. Look, real good RSA, you'd have to say. Real shame about top of the game. But, you know, Delta Work looked the best staying novice in Ireland throughout last season and went to Cheltenham with a huge amount of hope attached to him. Gordon Elliott had a rough start to Cheltenham. And, you know, speaking to him a few weeks ago for the ATR website, you can just hear it in his voice, you know, the amount of regret that they have about Delta Work in the RSA. It's very clear, like there's no being coy about it. They really feel he would have won had Gordon given slightly different instructions and had the plan been executed a little bit differently.
What do they mean by that? Okay, they rode him sort of conservatively because they were sort of...
I think the way Gordon put it was, we didn't give our rider enough confidence going out, and our rider perhaps didn't have enough confidence himself. And, you know, the horses got interfered with late on, and it was a frustrating one.
What do you think? Did he almost say to you that they wished they'd ridden him more aggressively?
I think so, yeah, reading between the lines. And would that have been the difference between winning and losing? It's very hard to be bullish, but that is certainly their view. And they, you know, they wouldn't be so open about that unless they really were really adamant in their own minds, you know, and they know their own horse better than anyone. So that really pricked my ears. That's not something you'd often hear from a trainer, to speak like that.
Yeah.
And look, of course, he went to Punchestown after that and was fiercely impressive. And I also get the impression they really wished they could have got the run into him between Christmas and Cheltenham. He was declared to run at the Dublin Racing Festival. They pulled him out.
Too quick. Ground was too quick.
Ground was very quick that meeting. I'd say they don't regret putting him out in itself, but they just really regret not getting a run into him in between. So look, the RSA form, I'd be shocked if it doesn't stand up well this season. Look, we know he has the tools. We know he enjoys Cheltenham. We know he stays really well. And look, he's a very clear Gold Cup contender from the Irish side of the water. And look, I'd be really hopeful he'll match up well with those established chasers such as your Ken Boys and your Alboom Photos and what have you, and you know, really contribute to what is a really good division.
I'd just like to see, do you think then that he is going to surpass an Alboom Photo this season?
Look, I don't know. Again, he needs to step up, but I think he has all the tools to do it. I think he has a little bit more improvement in him. But look, I think we'll get to find out very quick with him. I suspect it'll be one run and then on to Christmas where he'll meet all these horses at Leopardstown in the Christmas Chase, and then maybe on to the Irish Gold Cup. You know, look, I know at the start of the season with staying chasers, I've often fallen into the trap myself, you know, of thinking and believing that it's such a strong division, but they start to fall by the wayside because they're staying chasers, and we don't often get to where we want to get to at the back end of the season with them all fit and sound and ready to rumble. But right now, it's a division I'm really excited about, and I'd like to think that Delta Work will come up as he needs to get in amongst all those big boys that are established.
I think really similar sort of comments apply to Santini, who was having only his 6th or 7th career start in that RSA, and only his 3rd start over fences. You can't go and win races like that with that kind of build-up, and yet he so nearly did. He's got so much. He looks every inch a proper staying chaser. I don't think we've even scratched the surface with it. Am I wrong or am I right?
No, you're absolutely spot on. Look, when he ran first time last year at Newbury, he was big.
Yeah.
Big as a house. And they were fully expecting him to get beaten. But he's just showed how much class he's got. Yeah. He's got a lot of class, this horse. He is huge. And I think you've hit the nail on the head with him. He is one that they've always felt is going to be better each year.
Yeah.
When he gets stronger and has got enough, it's almost like enough fuel in the body to power the engine.
Yeah.
That's what they're waiting for. Yeah. And this will be his time, and it'll be very interesting to see how he shapes up and how he steps up this season.
So exciting. I mean, that was the race of the festival for me, the RSA last year, because it's so rare that yet A, those horses all turning up on the day, and B, them all running their race, and they did. The right 3, coming down the straight. It was unbelievable, wasn't it, to see that? And Santini for me.
And Mick, with Santini, like in my mind, he's one that I wouldn't be shocked if he gets beaten along the way.
No.
But when he gets to the Gold Cup, that'll be where he produces his peak effort. Yeah. Because, look, as we know, the Gold Cup is a really extreme test of stamina within the staying chase division. Yeah. And some horses, they just give you the strong impression that they'll absolutely love it. And I assume you agree, but that's the way he looks to me. He looks like one that when he gets such a test as that he'll really come.
But as well, I think a lot of that is down to the trainer. Because that's the one thing that catches Nicky out with some of his horses at this time of the year, is they're not as ready for those tough races in bad ground as, your Paul Nicholls trained horse or a Colin Tizard trained horse. Nicky, it's not about winning in November. It's about winning in March. And I can guarantee you one thing. This horse will be peaking in March, because that is where every road, every step, it's almost like the way to get across the water. Each little stepping stone gets you closer to the target. And that's the way Nicky has always played it throughout his whole training career. And his record at Cheltenham tells you that.
Yeah, absolutely. Really exciting. I'm even more excited than I was now about Santini. Now, you, as well as giving us presenting Percy, it's great that you did bring up presenting Percy, because we had emails and tweets about that. We've also had questions about Altior, though, because obviously we all know Altior, the plan is this brilliant champion chaser is going to step up in Trip now and seek out new challenges. Will Altior be beaten stepping up in Trip, says Mark. Maybe he means, will the step up beat him? What's your take? Is this something he's crying out for, or is it just an exciting and bold challenge?
I think it's an exciting and bold challenge, but you speak to when Nico got off him, having won the Queen Mother on him, he said maybe it's time now to step up and Trip. But it's funny, you go back in time, and like Kevin was saying about looking back over his notes, from previous years, and you see this horse, and I can remember when he won at Kempton on Boxing Day in that novice hurdle, and I thought then, wow, he just looks, oh, this is going to be a struggle, and whoosh, he goes and wins impressively. He's got an awful lot of talent, this fella, and I look at him and I just think, you know what, when he runs over further, the way he's relaxing a lot more in his races now, I do not see it being a problem. I really don't. And I know people will say, oh yeah, but you're, and I get it all the time, social media, all the time. Oh yeah, another Henderson horse, another Henderson horse, another Henderson horse. I don't care. I really don't. You can abuse me all you want. I don't care. This is a proper racehorse, And like, I can only harp back to, I rode Koto Star to win at Tingle Creek over 2 miles, and he was only a 5-year-old. If you'd have said to me then, this horse is going to win 5 King Georges and 2 Gold Cups, I would have laughed. Not in a million years. He's got too much pace. And look what he did. You know, and yet you look at this horse and you think, you watch his run style and you think, oh, when this horse goes over further, he will still have that kick. And like, I think when he runs over further, I believe it.
Okay. One other question, which was another viewer's question, which I hope might pop up on the screen, which is a tactical question for you. Say that he does meet Surname early this season, and Surname goes bombing away. What do you do if you're sitting on Altior and you're stepping into unknown territory in terms of the trip? Do you go with Surname? Do you give him some rope? How would you ride Altior? There's the question there. What should Altior do if Surname goes off like a rope?
If Altior's off the bridle, Surname's going too fast. You've got a horse that's won 2 champion chases and an Arkle and a Supreme Novice Hurdle. If he's off the bridle, Surname's going too fast.
So you let him go?
You have to let him go. Yeah. If you try and get Altior out of his comfort zone, it's the quickest way to get a good horse beat. Get him out of his comfort zone. It's the biggest mistake that jockeys make. Get a horse on his head too early in a race. They will empty. If you have the gonads to sit there and think this horse is going to stop, you watch it in any race. All of the top jockeys are not afraid to take a punt because they know, their experience tells them they're going to get it right more often than they get it wrong. But if you go chasing a horse that's out of his comfort zone early in a race, they are not going to finish and are basically going to come home walking. And like, nobody wants Altior to finish in a race like that. Least of all Nico de Boinville, who knows him better than anybody. He won't be doing any chasing. But the truth of it is, if Altior's on his A game, he'll be travelling behind Surname.
And you assume he stays. You have to ride assuming you're going to get the
You
trip.
have to. Yeah. You have to. And like, Nicky always said that to me whenever I rode for him. He said, we're running him over this trip, you've got to assume he gets it. Yeah. And if he doesn't get it, he doesn't get it. Where do you stand on the Altior stepping up in trip, Kevin?
Really excited to see it. Look, Altior's a champion. We know that. He's you know, he might not have the rating that puts him there, but I'd put him up there with the best 2-milers we've seen in recent years, certainly maybe the last decade. But you know, he's always shaped like he'd certainly be perfectly okay at 2.5, and class will carry a horse a long way. The concern I have is not so much the trip. I'm worried about his initial targets. You know, going to be at Ascot and potentially against Surname. Fabulous race and prospect, but you know, Altior is just showing this tendency to jump left. And I know it was more pronounced when he was making the running, and you know, we assume he wouldn't be making the running if Surname was in there, but it concerns me. You know, I'd always be one that if you're going to change something, I'd always rather change one thing at a time. And it just, you know, going up in trip is one thing, but doing it going the wrong way around, it would concern me, and it'd be the same in the King George. You know, it just worries me. I'm thrilled that they're doing it. You know, it's a very sporting, daring thing to do. We need more of it in National Hunt racing. So there'll be no one more excited than me to see it happen. But I'll just go in there a little bit concerned on that count. And you know, we have to remember as well, he's a little bit older now. He's been a champion for a few years. It hasn't been always smooth sailing with him. He's had some breathing issues. And I know I was saying this exact same thing last season, you know, and with me, it's probably a pessimistic way of approaching it, but with horses that have had breathing issues and other physical issues, I don't necessarily like to assume that they'll return the same horse they left. I like to see it before I fully believe it. And you could, if you're being a bit picky, you could make a case that Altior wasn't quite as good last season as he was the season before. Not by a long way, but by a bit. And if he's a bit diminished again this season and he's taking on a horse like Surname, who himself looks ridiculously talented, we might just come away from this season saying, oh, I wish he'd gone up and trip a year earlier. But again, I'm being pessimistic. I get pessimistic when I'm really excited. That's my way. And look, I really hope it works out, because God, wouldn't it be incredible to see Surname and a peak Altior having a real
absolutely.
dust up.
Very exciting. Is it the King George is the sort of the be all and end all? If you win a King George, you'd have to go and have a go at the Gold Cup as well, wouldn't you?
Well, not necessarily, because that's another step again. But you know, Patricia Pugh and Christopher, you know, the two of them, they want to take the chance. They want to give Altior the chance to go into the history books. Yeah. You know, so they're very keen to try it. And you know, hats off to them. It's so easy to just sit there and just keep winning the same prizes all the time. But you know, this horse he owes nobody anything, and they're not doing it for that reason. You know, they're doing it because they love the game, and you know, they love this horse. And I just hope, for everybody's sake, that it goes out and it works. And if he doesn't stay, he doesn't stay. Yeah. But you know, it looks like it's going to happen. And you know, Nicky said after the horse walked last Saturday, he said, you know, he looks like he's got so much pace again this season. You know, and you know, that's fantastic to hear. You know, you see the horse coming back straight into his walk and grabbing the bridle and showing lots and lots of pace. That's what you want to see.
That's good. That's good. We hope that we might get to see quite early this season, Surname versus Altior. You could be there at Ascot, of course, if you choose that for your free tickets, because of course that's the prize that's up for grabs on the At the Races Facebook page right now, and you could get tickets for the National Hunt meeting of your choice at Ascot, and you might well choose that meeting. Loads of good jumps meetings throughout the winter, of course, from Ascot this season. Dark horse time. We talked about a lot of big name horses and obvious divisions and so on, and we've picked out a few less well known runners here for various reasons, no doubt. So Kevin Blake, kick us off. Tell us about your horse and why you've come up with it.
Well, he's trained by Gordon Elliott, a 4-year-old by Saddler Maker, the sadly missed Saddler Maker, proper sire that typically died when we were all realising how good he was. But this horse started off in the Land Rover bumper, which is a very high-profile sales bumper at the Punchestown Festival. Yep. Wasn't especially fancied. Speaking to Gordon, this isn't a horse that would light you up on his homework. But go watch this race if you get the chance, because he produced a really remarkable performance, was dropped in, you know, ridden with education in mind. I've no doubt they would have been delighted, I'm sure, with a nice, happy experience, finishing off well, and come off the bridle, you know, over 3 furlongs out, and all of a sudden he's just like there's a rocket inserted up as you know what, and he's taken off, and has picked up in just the most visually remarkable style, with his ears pricked, and has gone away and won by, you know, may as well have been half the track. It was sensational. And listening to Gordon talking about him, not really a bumper horse on looks, you know, will go hurdling now, and looks the type to do much better over hurdles. And look, he's won his first bumper start by a long way. I don't know if that qualifies as dark, but I suspect that a fair few people would have seen the name flash up there and wouldn't necessarily have been familiar with him. Yeah. But he's definitely one to keep an eye out on, because he, in that race, there was just talent oozing out of him, raw talent. And if he can put that in the right direction and can jump a hurdle anyway adequately at all, I suspect he'll win a heap of races.
Okay, we'll watch out for him. I've thrown in one from Harvey and Sue Smith's yard. Yeah. Actually, Sue Smith trains a horse called Oscar Wilde. He's only 5 and he's run a handful of times. He hasn't, you know, set the world on fire, it's fair to say. But he has run into some quite decent horses. He ran quite close behind Rouge Vif, Harry Whittington's horse. It was a decent animal. This is the race, actually, from Newcastle last season. And is that the race? It might not be, actually. That is... No, that's a different race. That was the following race, actually, where again he hits the frame there in 3rd. But he's running into some quite decent animals along the way. Oscar Wilde, I just liked him as an individual. When I was, the yard is full of really nice horses. Many of whom will go on to be very, very decent indeed. Nice Trevor Hemmings horses and what have you. But I liked the character of this horse, and maybe come away and look through his form. And it was actually the run before that which I particularly liked. And I just think he's a baby. And since then he's come out and run a few days ago. He got beaten by quite a distance in the handicap battle. But I think, given time, given him maybe a bit more of a trip and soft ground, I think he'll be all right. And he's one who could be a work in progress. So.
Good and dark.
Very dark.
Not dark.
What have you come up with, Mick?
I have gone for a horse that I actually went to see before he ran on his point-to-point over at Donegal-Doyle's. He's a horse by Jeremy. He's called Let's Go Champ. He went to Bartlemy a week after I went to see him. And I like, honestly, I loved this horse. Like, he moved like a ballerina, this fella. And, you know, they wanted serious cash for him before he ran. And he then went to Bartlemy and he won very, very nicely in a time that was 9 seconds faster than the other fastest time of the day. Now, the races were all over similar trips, and they were varied from 12 seconds to 24 seconds slower than the time that this fella won. And the horse that finished second is a horse called Fullback, who is now with Gary Moore, who Colin Bow trained as well, who is a nice horse as well. They put a long way clear. And this Let's Go Champ is definitely one. He then, after winning at Bartlemy, went to the sales, and Roger Brookhouse bought him. Paid 375 grand for him.
Wow.
But when you see this horse in the flesh, you can see why there was a lot of people were really interested in him as well. You know, back that up with the fact that it was a very fast time in his point-to-point. I saw Tom George actually at Chepstow the other day, and he said, look, this is not a horse that I'm going to rush.
Yeah.
Because he's got a future, this fella. He's only a 4-year-old now, and he said, I'll be looking after him. But I really like this horse, and I think he's definitely got a future, and he's one to keep on the right side.
Yeah, fingers crossed for him.
He does. His pedigree jumps out a bit as well, doesn't it?
He's related to our Connor.
Yeah, he's by Jeremy, another one who we sadly lost just as we were realising what a good national hunt sire he was. And this fella is by Jeremy, and his dam is a half-sister to the late great Our Connor, who was also by Jeremy. So very closely related to Our Connor.
Good stuff. So you've you've obviously had your eye on him for a little while.
Yeah, I had my eye on him, but it was only one eye because I'd have had to sold the other one to buy it.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see whether he lives up to Mick's very high assessment of him. Let's squeeze in a couple more of your questions before we have to wrap things up. And what have we got for you? Battle Over Doyen made his chasing debut just the other day. What did we make of that?
Yeah, I liked him. You know, massive horse. You know, cliche time now, but when he was over hurdles, you looked at him and you go, "You're not a hurdler." And he went to Cheltenham, well fancied for, wasn't it, the Ballymore? And you know, Gordon said, yeah, disaster. Didn't travel over well, didn't eat or drink really when he got there.
He was favourite for the Ballymore, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he never went a yard. Disastrous. Put a line straight through it, and started off over fences at Galway over the weekend. Galway, tricky track to have your first run over fences, especially for a big behemoth like him. But I thought he was nimble and likeable. He was a little bit balloony at one, but in general, I really liked the shape he made. I was personally very, very happy with it, and you know, did what we spoke about, the technique we like to see horses show over fences first time, and you know, considering the size of him and everything else, he showed a lot of athleticism and would give you strong encouragement that he'll be a nice bit better over fences than hurdles, and you know, RSA type would be in my mind.
Who will ride him? This brings us to our next question, actually, because a viewer emailed us, Facebooked us, I can't remember, but it was an interesting question. It was about Jigginstown. Actually, this is the impact of Jigginstown winding down from Craig. This is not a riding one.
We can deal with both, yeah.
We'll deal with both. So Craig's saying, what will the impact be of Jigginstown winding down? Because that announcement was made by Michael O'Leary a while ago. Obviously, it's going to take a while, by the look of things, before that happens. Is that your understanding, Kevin?
Yeah, for sure. Look, they're just not buying any new horses, but you know, the system that Gigginstown had in place, they were buying store horses, you know, horses from point to points, young horses from France. If you hadn't heard that announcement at all, but it was still happening, you know, as a racing fan, I don't think we'll notice anything different for, you know, 2 years perhaps.
Yeah.
I think it will be quite a while before we see it. Look, Gordon Elliott, is clearly going to be the one most affected by it. But look, Gordon has a luxury that Willie Mullins didn't have at the time. Michael O'Leary pulled out the 60 horses on 1 day's notice. Gordon has a couple of years to adjust his business, to attract new owners, to buy those young horses that Gigginstown might have been buying. Look, don't I'm not trying to make little of it. It's a big challenge for Gordon Elliott. Worrying for the Irish National Hunt game, I would say.
That was going to be the next thing for both of you. Does somebody step in and fill that void, or does it mean that you might be able to avoid the next Let's Go champ that you see, if there's less competition to buy those pointers?
It seemed funny because at the sales you didn't see evidence of that.
Yeah.
It still seemed quite strong. You know, one of the markets, Eddie O'Leary and Mags O'Toole were almost a team buying their stores, their young stock. They weren't there, but you still had the point-to-point boys buying that type. Yeah. You won't see that. You didn't see that much difference this year. It's whether it's next year and the year after you might see an impact.
That would be my feeling on it, because I suspect what we saw this year, like Mick says, the trade was still excellent at the Land Rover sale and the Derby sale for the better class of horse. But I get the strong impression that there was a very big element of Nicky, Paul, and all those trainers. After the Gigginstown announcement came out, they grabbed hold of their owners and said, lads, if we're going to do this serious now is the time. Yeah. Now is when we're going to get value. And when you look at the results at the Land Rover sale and the Derby sale, an awful lot more, and it's anecdotal, but I got the impression an awful lot more of those top quality store horses ended up going across the Irish Sea.
Interesting.
And that would be probably the main concern. I think Gordon Elliott will be just fine. He's shown in the course of his career that he's got the ambition and the drive.
And there's plenty of money going the other way, of course, as well, isn't there, from the UK over to Ireland to go to Gordon and to Willie. But it's a point that Michael O'Leary often made. When people say, well, we've got all these Gigginstown horses running. He said, it's not that long ago that all the good Irish horses were being sold.
Oh, yeah.
And that would be my concern. And it'll take quite a while to see it play out, maybe 5-6 years, maybe more. But I just think that if you took the Anglo-Irish classifications for the last few years and broke it down via what country they were trained in terms of the percentage breakdown of the 140 plus horses, I just wonder that in 5 or 6 years' time it might have just flipped a little bit and more of those horses have ended up in Britain.
Yeah. Okay, there was a related question which was about riding arrangements at Gigginstown. Now, Davy Russell hasn't been retained rider for a while, but a few people say, well, he doesn't seem to be riding very many at all now for Gigginstown. Has anything changed as far as we know?
I actually asked Davy this because I'd seen the question, and he said no. I said absolutely nothing. He said my door is always open. He said I'd love to be riding for Gigginstown, and he said, you know, I can't wait for the next day. So, you know, he's very much open. There's been no fallout. There's not been anything said, or there's been, you know, no spat. Contrary to anything I certainly haven't heard anything, and he confirmed that. So, you know, he's basically waiting for the call. Maybe he's hoping that, you know, Keith Donoghue and, you know, quite a few of the other lads are still riding plenty of winners, and when the big days come, Davy will be getting a call, because obviously there's a date next April that I'm sure history is beckoning for the mighty Tiger Roll. He's got a small appointment at the Cheltenham Festival before that.
That'd be some story, though, if Davy wasn't on it, wouldn't it? Blimey.
It would, but at the moment we've got to assume that he is.
Well, we'll wait and see.
Until we hear otherwise.
Yeah.
Well, I looked it up, actually, and, you know, I think this season Davy's ridden just 2 winners for Gigginstown. I think he's had 16 rides or so, which is less than one would expect. But, you know, the Gigginstown situation with jockeys is far more fluid these days. And personally, I think that's probably the best arrangement for that setup. The way they run their horses, often having multiple representation in races. I always thought it was, you know, it was clearly one of the best jobs in National Hunt racing, but it was also one of the most mentally difficult for whoever had the choice. Yeah. Because it's one thing going out and riding in big races and trying to do the best you can do, but when you have the added pressure of having to pick for 3 or 4 really good prospects for that race,
or 11 like the Irish Grand National.
But like, I can only imagine and these lads are built a bit different than most normal people, but you'd have to be made of stone for that not to weigh on a fella when you're getting it wrong, you know, through no fault of your own. So I think that the situation that, you know, last season it was Davy and Jack were riding most of Gordon's. You know, Rachel was riding their horses for Joseph and Henry, and Sean Flanagan was riding them for Noel. You know, the other day we had Keith Donoghue riding Battle Over Doyen, and Dara O'Keefe riding Cap York, with Davy riding another one, a non-Gigginstown horse for Gordon Elliott. So it's not a surprise that, you know, it has been mentioned, but I wouldn't, like Mick says, I would believe the Davies line that there hasn't been a falling out. It's just the situation is fluid. I wouldn't be worried. I wouldn't be
jockeys, yeah.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be concerned about any breaking up of the combination.
Come those big days, as you say, mate, you go for your big race riders, don't you?
That's what he is.
He's a big race
like
rider,
mentally.
Yeah.
He's the big race jockey.
We will see.
You'd struggle to leave him sitting in the winner.
Absolutely. Yeah, you'd have thought so. Let's squeeze in another one. This is one that I think is about the regulation of should the BHA or I presume the Irish racing authorities license ownership syndicates. This may be in the wake of the situation with the Irish group that own Ken Boy and others, the Supreme Racing group. But I don't know what the regulation is. I mean, obviously, authorities do regulate owners effectively, so that there is some regulation of owners, but this is how syndicates operate and sell their shares, I guess.
Yeah, it's pretty loose. I'd be more familiar with the Irish regulations than the British ones, and it's pretty loose. You know, ultimately there's an agent appointed, and they're the ones with the responsibilities. I know in Australia there is far tighter regulation of syndicates and racing clubs, and there's a process to go through before a syndicate or racing club is approved by the racing authorities before they're allowed to do business and get customers. And look, that makes perfect sense for me.
Yeah, I think. Look, I know the trouble is with this. We're talking about after the horse is bolted, trying to shut the door. But there's no doubt about it. You should. I can only talk from personal experience.
Well,
I've got
your racing club.
A racing club. Some of our horses have 21 members. All our accounts are transparent. We had our AGM 2 weeks ago. The accounts were there for everybody to see. So everybody knows what's in the pot. Everybody knows what the horses cost. Everybody knows what the training fees are, and everybody knows how much they own of the horse. And I think that there should be an onus on the licensing body to have everything in order, having it all written down and documented properly.
But you see, you're running an operation, you're doing everything properly and correctly. That's just more bureaucracy for you, and you don't need it because you're doing nothing wrong.
Very true, but I think that that's the way it should be.
Okay.
Because if you pay for 5% of a horse, you should own 5% of the horse.
Yeah.
And look, the operations that are doing the job correctly and as they should, they would welcome.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I know it's a pain and more paperwork, more processes to go through. But anyone that's doing the right thing should welcome that. You know, it's the fellas that have something to hide that wouldn't welcome that. And I know it's more to be putting on the BHA or HRI or what have you. But look, at the end, getting new owners involved in this game is so important. We cannot, we don't have new owners coming out of our ears, and we need to protect those that want to invest,
particularly in this field, because this has got to be one of the future mechanisms, hasn't it, for getting people in?
And it's entry level. You know, racing clubs and syndicates are generally entry level options for owners, and if we have lads that are doing the wrong thing and taking advantage of people's naivety or what have you, that's bad for the game. Because you don't know what these owners have the potential to grow into. They might start off as a racing club member, but who knows, 10 years down the line, they might be buying a leg, they might be buying a whole horse. So couldn't be more in favour of increased scrutiny and tighter regulation, because we need to protect owners, potential owners.
And also not scare people off. If you're reading in your paper that, some skullduggery is going on, it's put you off, isn't it?
An awful lot of people's only contact with horse racing is reading a Dick Francis novel.
Yes. Yeah.
So we have to destroy that myth and give them a product that they can be confident in.
Yeah.
And I think that is our job. And I think it's important that we do that. And I think if the regulation means it has to be stepped up, so be it.
Fair enough.
And look, this is quite a high-profile case now because it involves the Gold Cup favourite. But we'll get the details of this as it plays out. We only have essentially accusations and what HRI have done so far. But there was an absolutely horrendous case over here a few months ago involving hundreds of thousands of pounds going missing, and that's going to play out in the courts. And in terms of PR for the game, if that's not enough negative publicity to show the BHA and HRI that they need to grab hold of this before there's more negative publicity, you know, I don't know what will.
Okay. Let's play Fantasy Owner now, because there's another question which has come through today on Facebook. Would you rather own a 110 plus flat horse or an Irish point-to-point? This is a jumps recruit, so you get a horse to go jumping. You can either have a 110 plus horse from the flat, or you can have an Irish point-to-point winner. What do you go for?
It's the easiest question of all time, isn't it?
Fire away, Kev.
I'd have 110 flat
He
horse.
wants the-
For sure. For sure.
110 is very high. What if I
very
said
high.
90?
Yeah.
Ooh, 95, 100, it gets interesting. But just to answer
You
the
take the
question,
110 horse and keep it on the flat, though,
you
wouldn't
know, 110 is rarefied air in terms of proven high-level ability.
Yeah.
You know, they might not be able to jump a hurdle, but I take that one every day.
Yeah.
You know, the Irish point-to-point fields clearly produce a heap of stars, but plenty of Irish point-to-point winners, you know, end up pulling carts. So,
Yeah, but
given the choice,
Add 45
Yeah.
to that 110,
Yeah.
you get 155.
Yeah.
That gives you a rough guide as to a horse's capability over obstacles. We've been talking all night, horses in the high 150s, 160s in championship races.
Yeah.
Suddenly you're there.
Yeah.
Mirando, horse of Andrew Balding's. I was working at Ascot when he won. Now, it was soft ground. He went through it like a tractor, basically. And I tell you what, if ever I've seen a horse that is ready-made for jumping, it's him.
You take
He's
him.
a 6-year-old,
Yeah.
so he's a little bit old, really.
Yeah.
But that sort of type, going jumping, like you'd be licking your lips.
make them an offer, Mick, for the Mick Fitzgerald Racing Club. Get him over a fence.
I'll give them my other eye.
Exactly, you're running out, aren't you? Finally, a question on Faheen. This was another news line from. I'm surprised there wasn't more news reaction to this news that Faheen, they're going to go chasing with Willie Told You in his stable tour.
yeah, Willie said he'd like to go chasing. And
Novice chasing or retire, those might not be your only options, but
yeah, look, the reaction was predictable. You get a lot of, how dare they go chasing with this great champion in the latter stages of his career. But look, sometimes I'm not slagging people for reacting this way, but sometimes we can impose our feelings onto a racehorse.
Yep.
And it's natural for us. We know a horse like Faheen very well. We've a great amount of admiration for him.
he's 11, he's not 17.
He has had a wonderful career, but he is a racehorse.
Yeah.
He's a point-to-point winner. You know, he nearly went chasing a few times in his life. He's in the twilight of his career, but he'll find it a lot easier to win races going around in novice chases than he will in Grade 1 hurdles. Look, if he's fit, he's well, his enthusiasm is there, why not? You know, I look forward to seeing that. And of course, you'll naturally be a bit worried, but you know, if you're approaching your national hunt horses with that level of worry, you know, it's probably the wrong game for you, because every time they step out over a jump, no matter if it's a hurdle or a fence, there's a certain amount of risk. But I'm okay with this. I really am. Was I surprised when he said it? I was. But you know, I'm not going to knock him for it.
No.
I look forward to it. I'll be a little bit worried, of course. That's only natural, but he's a racehorse. He's jumped plenty of fences.
Born and bred to be a...
Yeah, he's jumped plenty of fences in his life, I'm sure. Let's see what happens.
I'm in the same boat. You know, I think it might actually make life easier for him. You know, running a beginner's chase somewhere, you know, he'll have a nice time and he can go and win. And then you wouldn't know. You know, Willie might think when they step him up and he's not up to it, they'll turn around and say, look,
Thanks.
thank you very much, Faheen. You've done your job. You've been a brilliant servant to us.
Yeah.
Now enjoy retirement. You know, it just means that they'll have an option. Yeah. He won't have to take on the very top level horses again at levels. He will have another chance.
Yeah.
And it's been in their mind for quite a while. I remember talking to Willie this time last year, and when we were discussing Faheen, he asked the question, has a 10-year-old ever won the RSA? You know, so it's clearly been in his mind for a while. So we'll see. Look, and the decision wasn't made when I spoke to him, but he said that's what he'd like to do. So we'll see what happens.
You can bet your bottom dollar he'll have a race course spin somewhere and he'll jump some fences. Yeah. They'll know then whether they're going or not. Willie won't just think, oh, let's toss a coin and see whether we go chasing with Faheen. That's not how it works.
No.
There'll be plenty of thought gone into it and a bit of practice.
Good stuff. You don't have to enjoy your retirements, but we do have to say thank you for your work, like we will eventually do to Faheen. Thanks to Kevin Blake and to Mick Fitzgerald. Good stuff, lads. I've enjoyed that. It's got my appetite whetted for the National Hunt season. I hope it has yours as well. We've been bringing you our guide to the jumps, our special preview show brought to you in association with the Betfair Exchange. Enjoy the season. and be lucky in your endeavours, whether you're a backer or a layer. Hope you find plenty of good investments over the coming campaign.